and Afghanistan as a Marine Corps officer. And for 31 years, Democratic Representative Joe Sestak was in the Navy, rising to the rank of admiral. He ran battle group operations in Afghanistan. Congressman, thanks again for joining us today. We heard an awful lot of testimony yesterday, some of it certainly heated. I'm wondering if you have the opportunity to question the dignitaries today, what will you be asking? And Representative Sestak, I'll start with you.
Right. My first question is that we were promised benchmarks by which we would measure our progress in this conflict in Afghanistan last March. We don't have them yet. And if you are going to insert a lot of assets, what are those measurements by which you judged how much assets you needed there? Second, if you've set a definitive deadline to begin our redeployment, but your major objective is al-Qaeda in Pakistan, how does that deadline measure up with these benchmarks of progress? And third, for Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, back in Vietnam days, we had probably about 15,000 foreign service officers in USAID. They're part of the civilian surge. 5,000 went to Vietnam. We've only got about 1,200 foreign service officers today in USAID. Where's this civilian surge going to come from?
Now, if I understand correctly, Secretary Clinton will not be at the House Armed Services Committee today. She's right now before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, correct?
I think you may be right,
yeah.
But we are expecting to have a secretary's representative there.
Right, correct. So have things changed for you at all, Representative Sestak, since yesterday when we spoke to you? What did you think of the proceedings yesterday?
I thought they were good proceedings. I thought there was a defining question on this date of beginning the withdrawal. I thought Senator McCain actually did a very nice job on that, as Senator Levin did on the same question I have about the benchmarks. See, my issue is that it's about al-Qaeda in Pakistan. And this deadline, they seem, is intended to have an effect on Afghanistan's central government. I think we should not rely upon that weak read. And so, therefore, I'm more interested in, and even more so since yesterday, what's our measure of progress towards the real to America, al-Qaeda in Pakistan?
Understood. Representative Hunter, the same thing for you. What will you ask today, and your thoughts about some of the questions that were asked yesterday? And, of course, Representative Sestak is talking about whether or not conditions on the ground will dictate when any type of withdrawal could occur.
Yeah, you know, I actually think that the president's speech was nuanced enough to where that July 2011 timeline is really a July 2011 transition to like a status of forces agreement in Afghanistan like we have in Iraq now. So I think it's nuanced enough to where we're not going to stick to it. I'm going to ask about that to where if it is flexible and it's really a transition timeline, not a withdrawal timeline. Two, only 30,000 troops. McChrystal asked for 40,000 troops. Why the 30,000? Why not 40,000? What other strategic things are going on throughout the world to where I think the president had to sit back and say, hey, we actually can't give 40,000. We can only do 30,000 because there's other contingencies that we may have to deal with, and we may not have the actual troop strength to do 40,000. So I'm gonna ask about that too, I think.
Yeah, and I think obviously the hope is that NATO will supply some of those forces, and we have a little bit more numbers on that right now.
If not, have NATO send euros, and by euros I don't mean people, I mean money. So this is going to cost $30 billion a year. I would like that broken down too, if possible. But why not have NATO then step up and say, okay, we're not going to supply troops, but we're going to pay for a lot of this, and we're going to pay for the sustainment of that Afghan army that's going to be really hard and frankly impossible for Afghanistan to sustain on its own with its economy. Why should the U.S. bear that load by itself? Why not have NATO kick in for that as well?
Well, you mentioned the Afghan army, and if the both of you would, listen with me for just a moment to some of the proceedings that went on yesterday. This is Secretary Gates talking a little bit more about how the Taliban may react or what their plan may be 18 months from now in July of 2011. Listen to this.
What are they going to do? Are they going to lie low for 18 months? That would be a terrific news because that would give us open field running. Are they going to go back to Pakistan and wait for 18 months? Terrific. It gives us the opportunity without opposition to help the Afghans build. Are they going to lie low in Afghanistan? if they are not attacking Afghans, if they are not blowing things up, if they are not attacking our coalition troops, then again, that gives us a huge opportunity. On the other hand, if they're going to engage, if they're going to be as bold and as aggressive as they've been over the past year, then they will encounter 150,000 foreign troops and a couple of 100,000 Afghan troops who will root them out.
Aside from getting your general reaction to some of what the Secretary said there, Representative Sestak, a couple 100,000 Afghan soldiers, where are they coming from?
That's an excellent question. I'm a little concerned that the administration may be putting too much reliance upon the Afghanistan army and military getting built up with acceleration. It will take a lot of time for that. And it gets back to my point. I agree with what the Secretary just said. But the issue of this definitive date that's been set, you've noticed a muted response from the leaders of Pakistan on that.
Certainly.
My concern is, what does it say? Not to the Taliban. He's right. We're going to find them. They're going to be somewhere as Pakistan on that side of the border moves forward, and we're out there protecting. But my concern is, what's it saying to Pakistan about our commitment of getting the Al-Qaeda in Pakistan and supporting them with the Taliban, that they are not crossing over if we've set this deadline? To me, it comes back to benchmarks, measuring progress, so the public knows what are the probabilities and when of an exit from Afghanistan. And to me, that's what it comes back to. That's why this question of a deadline speaks to me more of what the impact is on Pakistani leaders, because we want them in the fight and not having their intelligence begin to say, oh, I'm going to take a risk-averse approach here and keep my ties in badly, as they presently have, supporting some of the bad Taliban in case they need them as we depart.
Yeah, and it's $7.5 billion that the country has given over 5 years in aid to Pakistan. Some of the results of that, if you will, it seems we're still waiting for. Representative Hunter, I'd love to know if you agree about some of these Pakistan issues, obviously, with Representative Sestak, but also curious to know, I mean, you were there, you were in Afghanistan, you were in Iraq as well. Are there going to be some new training methods, or these 200,000 Afghan soldiers, are they going to be suddenly committed in a different way that they've been over the past 8 years?
I don't know. You know, the Afghan military is not going to be able to be sustained after we leave at any point, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or a year and a half. They're not going to be able to be sustained by their own economy. So they're either going to have to be sustained by us, by our allies, or they're going to have to kind of break up into kind of maybe militia-type units who go back to their outlying areas. They take care of them. They are trained. They're you know, soldiers second, civilians first. There's going to have to be some kind of a breakdown like that. When it comes to Pakistan, though, there's two different Pakistani thoughts, from what I understand. One is the Pakistani people want us to go. You know, some of them see us as occupiers. They don't know if they trust the Western influence. The other side is the Pakistani military leadership wants us to actually stay. They want to know from us that we're going to be around and we're going to help them in the long run, because they have to fight Taliban and Al-Qaeda in their own country. We want them to do that, but they want to know that they have our backing for that. So it's extremely complicated. Once again, here's the you know, the bad part about this, though. A counterinsurgency means getting the Afghan people to you know, go along with you, trust you, work with you as much as possible. This deadline, if the Afghan people aren't as, you know, let's say they aren't as nuanced as we are, they don't understand that there is flexibility, they just see a 2011 deadline, they're not going to work with us. They're not going to turn the IED guys in. They're not going to turn in shooters, because they think that they're going to get killed later. So it's not about us. We understand what that deadline means. It is flexible. It's a transition period. The Afghan person, I don't think, understands that. They just see July 2011, U.S. is leaving.
Obviously,
Heidi, may I add one point to that?
Yes, quickly.
If there's a moment. Very quickly, is I liked his earlier point. This is why I believe, as he's talking about militias around, notice what the Secretary testified yesterday. We're going to go to subnational, provincial governors, potentially tribal chiefs, in order to leave behind stability and hopefully not over-rely upon this corrupt, inept government there. That's why this question on this deadline is important. Who does it speak to? And that's why we need progress, measurement, measurements by which we can see what our progress is, and that's what we don't have yet.
Understood. Well, hopefully there is some room for that. And again, the two of you on the House Armed Services Committee will be talking at least with the Joint Chiefs Chairman and also the Secretary of Defense today. Thanks so much again for your insights today, Representative Hunter and Representative Sestak. To begin our top